The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Caldwell mansion, spilling warm light across polished marble floors and priceless art. The air smelled faintly of expensive perfume and tension. Elena moved quietly through the grand hall, her hands trembling slightly as she polished the brass handles of the massive oak doors. She had worked in this house for 6 years, always on time, always discreet, always respectful. To her, this place was more than her job. It was survival. Every cent she earned went toward her teenage son's school fees, his future. But that morning, everything shattered. Mr. Caldwell's voice echoed from the study, sharp, controlled, and dripping with disdain. "Elena," he called, "come in here, now." She froze for a heartbeat, then hurried inside, wiping her hands nervously on her apron. He stood behind his massive mahogany desk, his gray suit immaculate, his eyes colder than she'd ever seen. On the table before him lay a velvet box, open and empty, beside a golden pocket watch gleaming like a cruel piece of evidence. "This," he said, lifting the watch, "was missing yesterday. Imagine my surprise when the guards found it in your cleaning cart." Elena's heart stopped. "What? Sir, no, that's not possible. I never— Don't lie to me." His tone was a whip. "I trusted you. My wife said you were different, honest. Yet here we are." Tears welled in Elena's eyes, but she shook her head desperately. "Please, Mr. Caldwell, I swear I didn't touch your things. Maybe someone—" He cut her off with a gesture. "Enough, security." 2 guards entered instantly, their heavy footsteps echoing. They hesitated, glancing at Elena with pity. She looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to defend her, but Mrs. Caldwell stood in the corner, silent, avoiding her gaze. Elena's voice broke. "Sir, my son. He's waiting for me after work. Please, let me explain." "I didn't do this." Mr. Caldwell turned his back, his hands clasped behind him, the very image of cold judgment. "You can explain it to the police." The guards took her by the arms. She didn't resist, though her knees trembled. As they led her out, the grand house she'd cleaned for years seemed suddenly foreign, cruel, and suffocating. Outside, flashes from the reporters' cameras burst like lightning. "Maid accused of theft!" Someone shouted. Elena lowered her head, tears burning her cheeks. In the back of the police car, she pressed her forehead to the cold glass, whispering through her tears, "I didn't steal it. Daniel, I didn't." And somewhere across the city, her son sat at his small kitchen table staring at his phone as the news alert flashed across the screen. His mother's name, her photo, her shame. His fists clenched. He knew she was innocent, and he swore to himself that he would prove it, no matter what it took. The courtroom was filled with a suffocating silence, broken only by the faint hum of the ceiling fans and the scratching of pens against paper. Elena sat on the defendant's bench, her head bowed, hands clasped tightly in her lap as though she were praying. Her face was pale, her eyes red from nights without sleep. Every whisper in the gallery felt like a dagger. People who had once smiled at her in the market now looked at her with pity or disgust. At the prosecution's table, Mr. Caldwell sat rigid and dignified, his suit perfect, his expression unreadable. Beside him, his attorney, a tall man with a sharp jawline and colder eyes, was stacking documents neatly, preparing for what he assumed would be a simple case. The evidence on paper was damning. The stolen watch found in Elena's cart, her financial struggles, her access to the mansion. The motive seemed obvious. "Mrs. Elena Petrova," the prosecutor began, his tone calm but merciless. "You worked for Mr. Caldwell for 6 years. You were trusted with his home, his valuables, his privacy. Why then would he accuse you without reason?" Elena's throat tightened. I don't know, but I didn't take it. I swear I didn't." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. "Of course you deny it. Thieves often do." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Mr. Caldwell's son, Lucas, sat in the front row, his posture relaxed, his face blank, though his foot tapped nervously under the bench. Daniel, Elena's son, sat behind his mother, watching every movement with burning eyes. His mother looked so small in that courtroom, a woman who had spent her life cleaning the messes of the rich, now accused of becoming one herself. The prosecutor clicked a button on the projector. Security footage appeared on the screen. Elena entering the study, wiping the shelves, picking up the duster, then leaving. Seconds later, the image froze, showing the watch being discovered in her cart. "Here," the prosecutor said, "is the evidence. No one else was in the room." The defense attorney, an overworked public defender who barely knew Elena's story, stammered weakly. "It's possible someone else placed it there, Your Honor." "Possible," the prosecutor countered smoothly, "but not likely. The evidence is clear." Elena felt her world collapse. Her lips trembled. "Please, I didn't—" But the judge had already seen enough. The weight of wealth, influence, and appearances was pressing down on her from every direction. Then Daniel stood. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it echo in his ears. "Your Honor," he said suddenly, his voice shaking but strong, "I have something to show the court." Everyone turned. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Identify yourself." "Daniel Petrova." "The defendant's son." He walked to the front, clutching his phone, his palms sweating. He glanced at his mother. She looked terrified, but there was a spark of hope in her eyes now. "Please," Daniel continued, "I knew something was wrong. I couldn't believe my mom would ever steal. So, I checked the footage from the security camera she didn't know about, the one she put up in her bag after someone had been moving her things at work." A murmur spread through the courtroom. He connected his phone to the monitor. The video flickered to life. The same study appeared, empty, quiet, until the door creaked open. Mr. Caldwell's son, Lucas, stepped inside. He looked around, then smirked as he took the golden pocket watch from his pocket and placed it into Elena's cleaning cart. He even whispered, "Let's see how honest you really are," before walking out. Gasps filled the room. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Caldwell's attorney froze. Lucas's face turned ashen, his eyes darting toward his father, who was staring at the screen in disbelief. Elena covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. Daniel felt his knees tremble, but he stood firm, his voice steady now. "My mother didn't steal anything. She was framed." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. And in that silence, truth stood naked before everyone, raw, undeniable, and irreversible. For a long moment, no one moved. The courtroom seemed frozen, every breath suspended, every sound swallowed by the crushing weight of truth. The video still glowed on the screen, showing the smirk on Lucas Caldwell's face like an open wound in the room's silence. Then the judge's gavel struck sharply, echoing through the air like thunder. "Order!" he barked, but his voice betrayed a hint of shock. "Order in the court!" The prosecutor's composure shattered. He fumbled with his papers, stammering something about needing to verify the footage, but the judge cut him off. "Enough. The evidence is clear." He turned toward Elena, his expression softening. "Mrs. Petrova, you are hereby cleared of all charges." Elena's shoulders shook as tears streamed down her face. Her trembling hands flew to her mouth as if to hold back a sob that escaped anyway. After weeks of humiliation, fear, and sleepless nights, those words hit her harder than any insult could. Cleared. Her name, her dignity, her truth, finally freed. Across the room, Lucas slumped in his seat, pale and sweating. Reporters outside the glass doors were already pressing forward, cameras flashing like lightning. His father, Mr. Caldwell, stood motionless, his face drained of its usual authority. For the first time, he didn't look like a man in control. He looked like a man broken. "Lucas," the judge said sternly, "you will answer for this act. Framing an innocent woman is not a prank. It is a crime." Lucas's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean," but the words sounded hollow. His father's gaze silenced him more than any judge could. Caldwell's lips parted, but no sound came out. He turned toward Elena, and for a fleeting second their eyes met. All the arrogance, all the power seemed to crumble in that glance. I don't know what to say," he murmured finally, his voice low and hoarse. "I was wrong." Elena blinked through her tears, her hands trembling. She wanted to scream, to demand how he could have believed she'd steal from him after all her years of loyalty. But she didn't. She simply whispered, "You didn't want the truth, sir. You wanted someone to blame." Then she turned away, unable to bear the sight of him anymore. Daniel rushed to her, his arms wrapping around her tightly. She clung to him, sobbing quietly against his shoulder as he whispered, "It's over, Mom. They know now." As they stepped out of the courthouse, the noise of the world came rushing back. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting her name, people whispering apologies they never gave before. But Elena didn't stop. She held her son's hand, walking past them all with quiet dignity. The sun was bright, the sky clear, and for the first time in weeks, she could breathe without fear. Behind her, the man who had destroyed her life stood in the shadows of his own shame, watching the woman he had wronged walk free. Not with wealth, not with power, but with something far greater: the truth.